All right, let's dive right into this explainer and tackle something we literally all do, but constantly feel the need to apologize for using filler words. You know exactly what I'm talking about, right? The ums, the uhs, the likes that just naturally pepper our daily conversations. We're so often told they make us sound unpolished or unprepared, but today we are going to look at the secret underlying genius behind them. So, are these just bad habits? Well, it turns out regulators have been trying to ban these little hesitations for as long as we've actually had language. Seriously, if you thought your high school public speaking teacher was the very first person to dock points for saying think again. We've got texts warning against speaking with hesitation dating all the way back to ancient Greece and Latin times. And it wasn't just strict old-school teachers either. The totally legendary linguist Noam Chomsky, he actually dismissed these expressions as straight-up errors. He historically lumped them into this big bucket of linguistic disfluencies. Basically, he categorized them as useless filler that only distracts from the real meat of speech, claiming they had absolutely no relevance to true language. But, okay, here is the absolutely crucial point. Despite all this massive controversy and literally centuries of people trying to stamp them out, these exact disfluencies happen roughly 2 to 3 times per minute in natural speech. 2 to 3 times a minute. And no, it's not just some weird English quirk. Different versions of these exact same hesitations are found across almost every single spoken language on the planet, and, wait for it, even in sign language. Moving on to section 1, written words versus spoken speech. So to figure out why we just can't break this habit, we really have to look at the massive, fundamental difference between written and spoken words. See, written words rely completely on static context. You can usually figure out the meaning just by looking at the word sitting right next to it on the page. But spoken speech, that operates on a totally different level. When we speak, we add these profound layers of meaning through our tone of voice, our relationship with the person we're talking to, and our expectations of where the conversation is actually heading. In that fast-paced, dynamic environment, what looks like useless filler actually turns into vital, real-time data. Which brings us to section 2, the power of filled pauses. Linguists officially call these little sounds filled pauses. It's a type of hesitation phenomenon. So think of or even a no in other languages. Now, think about the difference between a totally silent pause and a filled pause. In a normal conversation, if you just stop and leave a dead silence, that's almost always interpreted as an open invitation for someone else to jump in and start talking. But a filled pause, that powerfully signals to your listener, hey, I'm still holding the floor here and I am not finished speaking yet. And you know, the benefits don't even stop at just holding your turn. Filled pauses literally buy your brain time. They give your mouth a second to catch up with your rapid-fire thoughts or give you a brief moment to fish out the absolute perfect word for the situation. But here's the really incredible part. They actually benefit the listener too. A filled pause kind of acts like a little alert system, signaling that a super important word is on the way. Linguists have actually found that listeners are far more likely to remember a word if it's delivered immediately after one of these ums or uhs. Okay, let's head into section 3, directing the conversation flow. So, hesitation phenomena aren't our only conversational tools. We also use things called discourse markers. These are everyday words and phrases like well or you know. When we're chatting, these words completely ignore their literal, strict dictionary meaning. Instead, we use them to effortlessly convey our attitude and expertly direct the flow of the dialogue. And honestly, here's a fascinating twist. Studies suggest that highly conscientious speakers actually use these markers way more often. They use them super carefully just to make sure that everyone in the group is being heard and fully understood. Let's actually break down the hidden functions of some words we literally use every single day. For instance, starting a sentence with look instantly indicates your attitude and helps you easily gauge if the listener is agreeing with you. Throwing in an I mean quickly signals to your audience that you are about to elaborate on something. And what about the universally dreaded like? Well, it actually performs some pretty vital functions, from establishing loose conceptual connections to smoothly and naturally introducing a quote. These markers essentially give people a real-time window directly into your thought process. All right, next up is section 4, how hesitation helps us learn. So these tools don't just help us understand each other better, they actually help us learn language completely from scratch. A brilliant study from 2011 showed this step-by-step with toddlers. First, these toddlers were shown common and uncommon objects while listening to a recording.
Then, a second recording asked them to identify the totally new, novel object. And here is where the magic happens. The toddlers performed significantly better when that instruction contained a filled pause. The or actively cued their little brains to expect a novel word, which helped them seamlessly connect new words to new objects with much, much higher accuracy.
And hey, this amazing little learning hack isn't just for toddlers. For adults trying to learn a second language, filled pauses act as this incredible buffer that smooths out those inevitably awkward early conversation attempts. Plus, contrary to popular belief, your use of filled pauses absolutely does not decrease as your mastery of a language gets better. Actually, it's kind of the exact opposite. Once a second language learner becomes more confident, using the appropriate native hesitation phenomenon actually signals their newfound fluency to native speakers.
Finally, let's wrap things up with Section 5, the meaning in the nonsense.
Now, the absolutely crucial point we have to remember here is that context is everything. In formal writing, unless you're writing realistic dialogue for a book or a script, these fillers serve absolutely no purpose. Writing an in an academic paper or, on a resume, that carries a pretty huge social stigma that will definitely work against you. But in natural, everyday, face-to-face conversation, that is their native habitat. In spoken dialogue, these seemingly senseless little sounds are actually highly evolved communication tools that convey a massive world of hidden meaning. So the next time you speak, instead of immediately apologizing for a hesitation or kicking yourself for letting a filler word slip out, take a step back. Ask yourself how you are actively directing the minds of your listeners. Are you confidently holding the floor? Are you highlighting an important upcoming word? Are you just making sure your friend feels heard and understood? You are essentially conducting a conversational orchestra, and those little ums and likes are your baton. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and definitely keep exploring the fascinating hidden layers of your everyday world.